Chris, take it over. We're excited to learn about kind of these new challenges that we're facing as we move into this virtual work life, which is a whole new deal for us. So please, we're excited to learn more. So I will let you take it from here.
Okay, thank you very much, Amanda. Appreciate it. So folks, thank you very much for allowing me a little time to talk with you. Now that we've gone through a little bit of the chaos of the last couple of weeks and tried to go through a little bit of survival, I felt it was important to kind of let people know about the things that you probably should know about now that you can actually take a little time to grab some notes and think about it. So I have a little presentation here. I've kind of pared it down to the most efficient information, and would like to make sure that you get it all and send any questions to Amanda so we can cover it. So here's our agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about the environment. Has it changed now? Environment, phishing, how to recognize it, the concept of bombing and Zoom bombing, the ability to, or the concept of hacking and how to avoid it, especially in the environment that we're in. We're going to talk a little bit about virtual conference room etiquette and setup, and then there should be time for some Q&A. All right, so we're moving on. So here's our environment. And before COVID, before coronavirus, a protected business environment had managed computers with a protected environment. There's typically a firewall, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. There's network security, there's antivirus software. All the operating systems on the computers and devices are patched and up to date. There's anti-malware software. And then there are programs that monitor the environment to make sure somebody hasn't taken over the environment or doing something behind the scenes. Computers with only business programs and business data are on this network, or should be, and your internet connection is properly sized for the amount of peak use of the business. And so put a little graphic over to the right here that shows the internet, that firewall, which is a device that does the protection between your world and the computers that are in your environment. And those computers could be anything, printers, phones, anything that you typically use in a business per day. So that's the way it was about 6 weeks ago. And now here's kind of the macro world of how it's gotten now. And so the internet is still there, but now your business is not in that protected environment. Your business is sitting in everybody's house or on the street or wherever anybody happens to be doing business at this particular time. And so we constantly are going through the internet to get to each one of those computers that are performing business actions and responsibilities. That's the macro world. In the micro world, this is what one employee's house might look like. The internet is still there. It's going through some type of modem and router. That's what that green disk is all about. And then we have all these things going on in our house, which is computers, laptops, smartphones, our television, and even the world of Internet of Things, which is the refrigerator in this particular case that's connected to the internet. And so that micro environment now has made challenges that we don't understand, or most of us don't understand, because it's abstract to us. You don't think about it because if it's all functioning properly, you're good. But if it's not functioning properly, or somebody is going to take advantage of you, there's a lot of other things to start worrying about. And so I needed to set the table for how we are now strategically set up in this new world. And these pictures that we've just talked about are going to have be the foundation for what we're going to talk about for the rest of the day. So here's the environment right now. the COVID-19 environment. The workforce now is using a mix of personal or business computers. We've just grabbed whatever we could use to get our email and be able to make phone calls and perform some type of business. Is your operating system up to date? The current operating systems that are up to date today are Windows 10, and in the Mac world, it's called Catalina. Windows 8 is still acceptable, and in the Mac world, High Sierra is still acceptable, but they are not the latest and greatest operating systems. Most of our folks in our homes don't have a firewall. They're pretty costly, and they are the go-between. They're the ones that stop the bad guys from getting into your house. If you have something called a router, that's not a firewall. All that's doing is sending the internet signal throughout your house, but it's not stopping anybody from getting into your house. And so we don't have the firewall in most cases anymore. Network security, all computers are on the home network are connected, whether you like it or not, and whether you're connected through a Wi-Fi password, and all that stuff. Do you have an antivirus software? Most of us do, but it's probably free and it might not be up to date. Is it functioning? Are you making sure the definitions are up to date? Are you patching your operating system? Microsoft sends out patches almost every Tuesday because of holes or bugs that they find in their operating system to patch security. If you're not on Windows 8 or Windows 10, Microsoft is not sending you any new patches anymore, so the loopholes are out there and they're wide open. Many of us don't like to patch our operating system because it shows up early in the morning and we know we're going to be down for a while, so we always postpone. Do you have anti-malware software? Probably not. Most of us think that antivirus software is acceptable, and that's only covering a good percentage, but not all of the dangers that are out there. And we probably don't have any programs that are actually monitoring your environment and looking for anything unusual that's going on in your environment being handled by bots or anything that's being taken over by your network. Home computers now are a mix of personal and business data, and the internet connection is sized for the budget, not actually sized for maybe what you're trying to do. And your Wi-Fi connection might not match the needs of the business environment. And some of us actually think that our Wi-Fi connection is synonymous with our internet connection. And sometimes that's true, and sometimes that's not. So, just besides all that, now that you've gotten into this new post-COVID world, I need to let you know as a business owner that there's a business liability regardless. And despite that virtual workforce, your data is still your business's responsibility. You are responsible for a data breach. You are responsible for ransomware if it gets on your system and locks everything up. You are still responsible for PCI compliance, and you're still responsible for HIPAA compliance. And I hate to tell you this, but the authorities that monitor and oversee this stuff, they're not really going to accept the excuse that you're in a post-COVID virtual world. So you need to be just as worried about it now as if ever before. So you have compliance and fiduciary responsibilities, and you need to advise your employees about the correct things to do to limit those exposures. So how do we do this? Well, you got minimal virtual fixes, business data. If it's left on the computer, it should be left at an absolute minimum, and it should be copied back in the business environment ASAP, and then deleted from the personal computer. It shouldn't be sitting on the personal computer at all, quite honestly. You should make sure your operating systems are up to date. You can do a check update in Windows 10 and Windows 8. And you can also check your operating system for Catalina and High Sierra. It's probably too expensive to give each worker a firewall, but Windows does have a software firewall that you need to make sure is at least enabled. Network security, you should have a Wi-Fi password. Most of us have something that's cute, like our dog's name or something like that. And if you have given it to friends and family, and you happen to be in a condo world where somebody could potentially be piggybacking on your Wi-Fi, you probably should change it. Because if somebody's on your Wi-Fi, they're on your network. And if they are on your network and they're not protecting their computers, they potentially are allowing a breach in your world as well. If possible, you should probably use a separate internet connection rather than your personal internet connection. So if the company is willing to somehow spring for a mobile hotspot or something like that, might be a good idea. Antivirus software, you need to keep the definitions up to date. And only if one computer in your household has up-to-date antivirus software, but all the rest of them don't, that's as good as nothing. You're no better off than you probably should be. And so all the computers in your network need to have up-to-date antivirus software. Business data continued. Patch those operating systems, check for updates, anti-malware software, you probably don't have it. One of the choices out there is Malwarebytes. There is a free version of that you can run regularly. And there's also a free version of another program called Spybot Search and Destroy. So those are things that are available to you. Internet connection should be sized for the budget. You probably should run a speed test connected by the Ethernet cable. So the Ethernet cable is the wire that you plug into the side of the computer. Run a speed test that way and find out if your computer is running at a speed that can be tolerated, especially for video connections, just like we're doing today. After that, and when you have that information, then get on the Wi-Fi and run another speed test. Because we're trying to figure out whether the internet connection and the Wi-Fi connection are the same, or the Wi-Fi connection is actually degraded from your Ethernet connection. Compare the results. And realize this, that speed tests results are impacted by the computers in the neighborhood. So when everybody happens to be home, so when everybody's binge watching Netflix or downloading movies, that's affecting your internet, whether you like it or not, because it is shared. Even though you paid for 25 megabits or 100 megabits, the fact that everybody in your neighborhood is using the internet is going to slow your world down. It's going to be slowed down by devices in your home. So if your teenager is playing Call of Duty, it's going to be affecting your Wi-Fi connection and your internet connection. Type of programs that you're running at home and what the neighbors are running. That's the Netflix that we're talking about. Internet contracted connection. You know what you purchased, but never are you going to reach that speed. That's the maximum that your ISP is going to allow for, but rarely you're going to get it. There's also the throughput of the network interface card that is on your computer. And if that is not sized for the internet connection that you bought, then you bought internet connection, but you're really not going to get the total use of it. The Wi-Fi router speed is also got to be up to date, and they go to 40 megabits to 100 megabits to sometime like 300 megabits, and now at some point we're going to get to 1,000 megabits or a gigabit. Wi-Fi card speed, that's on your computer again. That's how your computer processes the Wi-Fi signal. And then simply the computer and its drivers. So all these items have an effect on whether you're going to get the correct speed to do your work. Now, most of us don't care about internet speed when we're doing email and writing a proposal or something like that. The time that we start to experience degradations in speed and we notice it is when we're trying to do something like we're doing right now, video calls. So that's the reason you need to figure out how your video is working. and how your internet speed works with your internet. So here's the environment, and I just kind of drew a quick graphic here to show you all the places that we talked about. So up at the top left, you have the internet connected to the modem, and the modem is connected to the Wi-Fi router. Now, some of you have a combination of a modem and a router together. It looks like one box, but it really is two devices working together. Some of you have these separated. And again, the internet speed versus the modem versus the Wi-Fi all have to be synonymous on the same signal and the same speed of signal, or else it's not going to work. And then all these dashed lines are basically showing how your Wi-Fi signal is being consumed by all these devices in your home. And then that red arrow that we're talking about between the Wi-Fi and the one laptop is the one that you're trying to do a test on to see if all these other things that we've talked about are affecting the speed of which you are experiencing your internet connection on that particular device. So this is why you needed to do the comparison of connected to the modem and the laptop versus the Wi-Fi to the laptop. And so that's the difference. So that's the environment we're in. And now we're going to move on to the 4 categories of things that we're going to talk about today. And I'm just going to do a quick check of time to make sure I'm not. All right, we're good. So phishing, P-H-I-S-H-I-N-G, not F-I. So we've set up all these things. We have these precautions. And now we're still worried about the bad guys getting to our computers and consequently the data and the business data that's on our computers. And so the firewall that we talked about is supposed to protect us from that. And anytime a bad guy is trying to get to it, the firewall most likely is going to deflect it. However, and that's the result that you would get there if the firewall was in place. Unfortunately, we don't have firewalls, or what I've asked you to do is set up the Windows firewall on your computer. And you would get these types of reactions from a firewall or an antivirus piece of software to protect you. But the bad guys have come up with better ways to do this, and the way they do it is they're preying upon our users who are untrained, and that's why we're having this conversation today, or completely distracted because of all the chaos that's going on. The kids are home, homework, who's planning the meals, the dog needs to be walked, everybody's losing their minds, so we're not as attentive as we need to be. And how are they going to provide that payload? Well, it's through email, it's through bad websites that we go to, or it's through walking around with potential USB keys that have data on them. And so now we still have that firewall, but now we got the bad guys send you an email past the firewall. And if you happen to open up that email, you've basically let them in. And so how do they do that? Well, they're doing it with suspicious emails. And so here's how to recognize suspicious emails. And most of you can recognize the basic ones because you've seen examples of it. They come from an unknown sender, some really bizarre email address. They're not really addressed to you. It's like dear Amazon user or dear banking customer, something like that. They start with that generic greeting. They always have an attachment, or they have some type of a link. There's usually poor grammar, spelling, or punctuation. There's a calls to action, scare tactic, do it now, is very important. It could cost you, it's going to cost you money. free products, or asking for personal information. So you can recognize those right off the bat. But now, here is an example. So this is a basic one, a typical email that you would see, and you can see that it's coming from a generic user ID, email address, one that doesn't really make a lot of sense, upsefrappel.com, something I probably didn't recognize. It's generically addressed to you. It's not even talking to you. There's a call to action: get the latest updates, log into your account, do something now. There's a time limit: updates now by clicking the link below. And here's a cool thing: anytime in an email, before you click on anything, if you just take your mouse and you hover over it, you can see that most times the actual text of the link doesn't match the actual destination it's going to. And that is a clear sign that this is some type of a phishing technique. So you can see that gsx.apple.com doesn't match with that link down there in the highlighted area, https 77.95.226.86. Right? Very clear, and we recognize those pretty good. But now, our guys get more sophisticated. Now, all of a sudden, their grammar's getting better. They got the typical logos that we recognize. And so now it starts to look a little bit more nebulous. We're not as sure as what we're looking for, but the signs are all there. You just have to take the time to look for them. There's still a disconnect between the email address it came from and who it's actually coming from in the body of the email. When you hover the link, you can see that the link has nothing to do with LinkedIn anymore. And there was also a call to action. Here's another one from Apple. Again, we're using Apple, real cool. And again, that address doesn't make any sense. And the call to there's no correlation between the email it's going to and who it's actually being addressed to in the body of the email. And there's the generic user again. There's the hover. You can see that that link doesn't really go to where it says it's going. And another link right there. So that's the world of phishing. Don't know if we should stop here, Amanda, for any questions, or if we will move on to bombing.
I think we're good right now. I am watching the Facebook page and I do not see any questions at this time. So if you want to continue, I will keep you updated at the end for any questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, folks, so now we move on to bombing. And specifically, bombing has been associated with the product Zoom, which ironically or coincidentally we happen to be on today. So I need to delineate what's going on in the media. There's actually 3 types of bombing, Zoom bombing, that's going on, and I want to separate them for you so you understand exactly what they're talking about. The first version of Zoom bombing is where uninvited people are listening into virtual conferences and they're gaining some type of trade secret. So right now we happen to be doing a fairly pseudo-public Zoom webinar, and everything that I'm providing to you, I'm not worried about because I'm disseminating information that I think is just important for you. But if it's very important for me and my company, I want to make sure that only the people who are intended to be on this meeting are on it. The second version of of Zoom bombing is uninvited people that are getting on it, and they are all of a sudden grabbing control of the meeting, and they're showing ads. They're unfortunately displaying pornography, or they're just being plain disruptive. And this has unfortunately happened to some schools that were doing regular classes, virtual classes. And it's very upsetting, obviously, to parents if their elementary school children are being affected by some stranger that's showing pornography right there in their midst. And then the last version of Zoom bombing out there is that there is a bug or a few bugs in the Zooming software where hackers can actually take control of your computer by having Zoom installed on your computer. And because they're using that bug, that loophole to do that. And with that, now they have access to your computer, whether you're on Zoom or not, and they can listen to your entire room through your computer microphone, or they can watch through your computer camera. So with those three aspects of Zoom highlighted and separated, I wanted to give you some tips as to how to minimize the aspects of that. And the first one is, in any virtual conferencing, whether it's Zoom or not Zoom, most of the virtual conferencing software provides some type of meeting number and the ability to provide a password. And you should do this every time, because if you're sending out virtual meetings and passwords and you never change them, then people from past conferences can get in on the new conference. So if you want to protect the information, then you need to make sure that you change that password and that number whenever it's appropriate. And I would say, obviously, the maximum is every time. Check and verify that all participants are in the software. So at the bottom, I can see through the Zoom conferencing who's on it, and I can make sure that everybody's there. So you do roll call, and you make sure you understand who everybody is. And if they're not answering back, oh, phone number XYZ ABC 1234, and they don't answer back, you should have a little bit of concern as to who it is that happens to be on that call at that particular time. Anytime that you are not on a camera, it's very good to put a Post-it note right over the camera. Because if I have control of your computer and your camera, there's no way that that person can physically remove the Post-it note. So just grab yourself a Post-it note and with a nice, fairly benign, stick them on the back and put it right over the camera when it's not in use. You'll know exactly when your camera is functioning and not functioning. When possible, disable the microphone on the computer. In fact, most of the time, you might not even use the microphone on the computer at all. Instead, you might decide to use a headset. And when you're not using a headset, disconnect the headset from the computer so it can't be used. Or disconnect the Bluetooth that's connecting to the headset. And the other option is not using a microphone at all, instead connecting to the website, the virtual conference room, with a phone. When you're not using your computer, close your computer, put it in hibernate mode or sleep when it's not in use. If it's hibernating, sleep, or it's closed, there's no way that somebody can listen in or use your camera. And of course, everything I'm talking about right here is unfortunately putting the onus on you to do something extra for your protection. That's the reason these guys have achieved this goal, is because we as human beings unfortunately become lazy and we say, I don't need to do that. I don't want to do that. It's bothering me. It takes too much time. Those are all the classic excuses as to how somebody will take advantage of you at some point. If you feel uncomfortable about Zoom, and you can see in the headlines that some companies have decided to get away from Zoom, that's fine. I just need this level set that you can move to maybe WebEx or Skype, but be advised that Zoom is the one that's getting the media time right now. It's just a matter of time before we're going to hear some loophole in WebEx, some loophole in Skype, some loophole in GoToMeetings. They're all there, folks, because human beings develop software and human beings make mistakes. And human beings rush to market because it's money that's necessary to get that thing to market. So Zoom, unfortunately, is in the crosshairs of society, but it won't be long before we jump to whatever the next one is, and there will be something that's going wrong with them as well. Not to say that you shouldn't jump from Zoom at this point. Maybe you should, but don't have the security or the false security that moving to WebEx has solved the issues that are going on with Zoom. It hasn't. You're going to potentially experience the same problems or similar ones. So that's the bombing section of it. Moving on from there is hacking, and we kind of already touched a little bit about hacking, because hacking already happened by the payload of going through the Zoom interface or the Zoom software installed. But here's the true way to avoid hacking, and some of these things are available to you and some of them are not. One way you're going to be able to notice hacking is that it requires monitoring. You need to know whether the data that's going back and forth throughout your house is being utilized by somebody other than you. And that's the reason that I'm in business for exactly that, is I go out and we monitor business networks for when somebody is not supposed to be on those networks, and we look for the telltale signs. Chances are you don't have all that software to be able to do that. But there are some reports that are included in your router or your firewall for abnormal data activity. And chances are you've never been in your router, and chances are you've never had a conversation or about this with your internet service provider, but you probably should do that, or at least get familiar with it. You need to keep updating your operating system, your antivirus software, your malware software, your passwords. Use a standard account on a computer, not an admin account. Many of us get our computer out of the box and we just start as the admin. There's a way to make your computer a different account and not an admin. And if you're not running as an admin, then there's a lot more limitations as to what somebody can do if they're logged in as you or pretending to be logged in as you. And you should use different passwords for each website. And I recommend a password vault. I use LastPass all the time. I cannot keep track of all the passwords that are in my midst. Password vaults keep that information for me. You should avoid public Wi-Fi. You use Wi-Fi from business or a home or a mobile hotspot, and many phones can become a mobile hotspot. You just need to look and see how to do that, and do realize that when you do use your phone as a hotspot, it's going to involve your data. So, and data is going to cost you. So you need to have that conversation and be aware of that. So that's the world of hacking to avoid it. And now we come to the world of etiquette. I'm just checking my time so I don't waste got time for it. Okay, we're good. So now we're in this particular world of etiquette in the world of virtual conference rooms. And remember that despite the fact that you are only talking to a computer, there are people on the other side, and you have to realize and make the understanding that somehow we lower our level of attention when you're talking to a computer, when you don't have that intuitive feeling that there are people in your midst. So you have to always think that everybody is in the room with you, despite the fact that they're not. And you remember, you only have one chance to make a good first impression. You should still dress for success, business casual or a logo shirt, just like I'm doing here. Brush your teeth, comb your hair, groom. We get a little, we're talking to a computer that we think that the computer doesn't really care. But like I said, there's plenty of people out there right now that are seeing me. And as Amanda just told me, this is being recorded and it's on Facebook streaming. So I need to look the best that I can, despite what my own limitations are. You should perform that speed test that we talked about earlier to make sure that you don't have a poor internet speed connection that's affecting your microphone and your video. If your video gets choppy, it might be because of all of those speed test interactions and interferences. Get on the conference call early, just as I did, to make sure everything is functioning properly. And realize this, as most video software has a preview. So check the lighting. I have a light in front of me. I don't have a window behind me, so I'm not a silhouette. Make sure that you are framed in your profile so that you're not people are not talking to your chest or talking to your eyes. And now that I moved that, I got to make sure that I'm back. Okay, there I am. Good. Put the computer on books or so that the camera is eye level. Many of you are using a 15-inch laptop. And unfortunately, a 15-inch laptop puts the camera lower than it should be. So now everybody's looking up at you and they're looking at how many fillings you got in your teeth. So put the camera up on a set of books so the camera is eye level with you. Because it's very uneasy to look at people and look at their ceiling and stuff like that. Check what is in your background and make sure it's not an unmade bed or breakfast dishes. In fact, in my situation with Zoom, I discovered that Zoom allows for a green screen. So I'm using marketing. You got the logo of my company behind me. So I'm somehow trying to communicate a message to you as my background while I'm talking to you. But if you don't have Zoom, you can always set up something in the background. Find a banner, create some type of something in the background that you can use as a part of your marketing material. Or at least have in the background a nice chair and perhaps a fireplace and maybe a nice picture on the wall that you'd like to give people a good sense of who you are and what you're about. Learn where the mute and the off video buttons are on each one of these pieces of software, and mute when joining, and always go to unmuting, talking, and muting again. Same thing with video. If you want to be seen, put the video on. If you're about to get up or you need to excuse yourself, perhaps you should take the video off, go and take care of what you need to take care of, come back and put the video back on. So get used to constantly turning off and turning on the mute, constantly turning off and turning on the video. And remember that virtual conference rooms have two modes. There's a show speaker mode right now where you're seeing me and you're seeing my desktop, but there's also a way that I can scroll through on the video and see who is on, and I can look at them. And what happens is that those modes continue to put the last person speaking at the top, and then they hierarchically set up each person who spoke before them. I can also go and see the entire grid of everybody who's on. And so the person who hasn't spoken can still be seen, and I can tell whether you're not attentive or whether you're having lunch or whether you're falling asleep and yawning. So if you're on the virtual call with your boss, always be on your best behavior, because if your boss has the agility to be able to know how to use this, they're going to be able to see how you're functioning in a virtual conference environment. And so that's pretty much my presentation, folks. It looks like we got about, well, about 18 minutes left. If there's any questions or anything else that somebody wants me to go over in more detail. A lot of stuff.
Can you hear me, Chris?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm not showing up on the screen, I think, from how it's viewing, but I am waiting to see if we have any questions right now on the Q&A.
Okay. Well, while we're doing that, I've put up my doing a obvious self-promotion here. Little bit of self-promotion, but also a lot of stuff was just thrown at you. There's a lot of information there. I tried to keep it minimum, but it is technology. And there's a phone number there to call me or an email address to get in touch with me if you need anything after our conversation today to go over or get more clarification personally, because a little bit of fear of not having the desire to expose your question to everybody right now.
Alrighty, well, I am not seeing any questions, but thank you for providing your information there. So if anybody does have questions, they can contact you directly.
Sure. Thank
Great.
you very much. Amanda, a lot of appreciation to the Chamber of Commerce for allowing me to do this and get this information out to everybody. It's kind of been something that's been bothering me since we started, so I appreciate the opportunity. For all of you out there who have been listening and now and in the future, I wish you the best. It's a crazy environment. Please do the precautions personally, professionally, physically, and now virtually to take care of yourself, because that's kind of important to keep moving forward. So thank you again for chatting with me, and I wish you all the best.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. We do have a lot of additional webinars coming up the next few weeks. So please make sure you head on over to myrtlebeachareachamber.com, where you can see multiple webinars on multiple topics that you can choose from, whatever your work at home life balance is right now. So thank you again, Chris, and we will see y'all again soon.
All right. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you,
Thank
guys.
You.